What's up everyone, and welcome to another Rust electrical tutorial. I'm Gneissish, and in today's video I'm going to give you 5 tips that I think you need to know. Let's do it. Hey, what's up everybody? We're back. Let's just jump right on into this. Tip number 1, solar panels, specifically solar panel placement. This is probably the number 1 thing I see done incorrectly, and it does not actually, although intuitively you'd think it would be, but it is not related to where you see the sun. That's for the player. The solar panels do not take into consideration the sun itself. It's actually based entirely on the map and where you are on the map. So I have placed myself directly in the center of the map on purpose, but if you are clearly in the north, you are going to point your solar panel due south every time. If you are clearly in the south, you are going to point your solar panels due north every time. If you're in the center and you're not sure what side of the map center line you lie on, you can do a very, very simple experiment where you take 2 solar panels, point 1 due south using your compass at the top, point 1 due north, like so, and then just check the voltage. Whatever one's higher is the direction that you're supposed to point them. So in this case, 20, there we go. So we are just south of the middle of the map line, and so all of our solar panels will always be placed every single time due north. There you go. All right, so tip number 2, batteries series versus parallel. The short answer to this is don't do any of this, but I'll explain this here for you just so that you have a general understanding. Just unhook these charging lines. You know, a lot of players would like to be able to hook a battery into this battery, into this battery, into this battery. And so you have some sort of batteries in series, and you would think that, okay, if we have 15 minutes on this battery, you know, if we hook 3 of these together, we have 45 minutes. But the problem is that Rust batteries have an 80% charging efficiency, which means of the 10 volts that come out of this battery and arrive here, this battery is only going to accept 8 of those for charging, which means that eventually, when this battery will die, this light will start to blink on and off while this battery gives it a little more juice, right? And the same thing's gonna happen to this battery, and the same thing. So the point is, you can't do this, don't do this. If you really desperately want to get that 45 minutes, this is technically the only way to do it. Because the small battery has a 80% charging efficiency like the other ones do, it requires a minimum of 13 volts to charge if you wanna keep it from dying. And so in order to do this, you have to actually back up each battery with 2 behind it. So we have this battery supported by these 2, which you know overwhelms that 13 threshold, and then this battery has these 2, and this battery has these 2. You would have to have each of these 4 batteries back here would have to have a minimum of 13 volts charging them. So as you can see, this is entirely not worth it. So you'd get your 45 minutes of time here, but you're going to need 4 solar panels to charge this, or 2, and I mean, not actually, no, you'll have to have 4. You would have to have 4. And so this, again, is not worth it. You can buy a medium battery and solar panels, so with no BPs at all. So just do that over this. And the last thing I'll say about these is, in parallel, similar to this, one of the big things about batteries in parallel is that if you hook 2 batteries in parallel like this to a root combiner, you will expect it to, you're like, hey, there's my 200 volts. That's great. Now I can wire up stuff that, adds up to 200 volts. Actually, you can't. And the reason for that is this. If you look at any battery, it gives you an active usage. And what happens is when batteries are hooked in parallel, if I hook these batteries up to this turret here, I'm running 10 volts, it's going to be 11 with the branch switch. And so you'll notice the active usage says 11. And the problem is both of these say 11. So this battery is saying, hey, I'm running this, and I'm going to drain accordingly. And then this battery next to it's saying, okay, well, I'm also running all this too, and so I'm also going to drain at the same rate. And so mathematically, one of these batteries is negated. And so having this 200 volts doesn't matter if it drains twice as fast. So this doesn't work. If you were really wanting to do this, you could. The best option is to just have 2 circuits. I mean, that's honestly safer anyway for raiders. Have 2 circuits where this battery runs some stuff, this battery runs different stuff. I mean, that's the way to go. You don't want to do this because active usage will be the same on both, and they will drain accordingly. So everything in tip number 2 is don't do this. Okay, so tip number 3, memory cell as a wire extender. Now this is really, really cool. I'm going to use yet another turret example. So let's say we're setting up a turret. You have your let's see, we'll run our line into here. We'll run this line out of here to our turret. And, you know, we're going to need 11 volts because the turret itself requires 10. The switch requires 1, ergo 11. Fire this up. Good to go. Look at that. So now let's say you have a turret that's too far away. You can use a memory cell as a line extender because the memory cell, although it says that it uses a volt, it actually does the math telling you that it uses a volt. It doesn't use a volt, it's free. And so you can actually prove this to yourself by running the output of this switch into this memory cell. And you would think that because the memory cell uses a volt, you know, we're gonna have 9 volts. We're gonna be short a volt here because we've got, you know, a volt here, and a volt here, or 10 volts here. So that should be 12, set to 11. And in fact, if you turn this on, the turret turns on. And if you look at the power in, it says 9, which is impossible because this requires 10. This says there's 10 arriving here and 9 coming out here. That's the trick, is right there. There's 10 arriving here and there is 10 coming out of here. It's just telling you that there's 9 arriving here and there's not, which makes this free. And so, you know, if you set this to 10, for instance, it will shut down because now we really do have 9 coming out and 9 arriving there. But it's gonna say there's 8 arriving there because this thing's doing some funky secret math. So it's a free line extender. And so the way that that would work is if you have a turret that's, say, way out there, and you need to get a line to it, but it's too far. If you hook this up here and you were to try to run this line all the way to the turret, you're gonna run out of space. See, we can't reach it, we're too far. And so what you can do is you can set a memory cell somewhere in its path that's close enough to the other one. And then you can run your output of your switch here. You could run that to your, I mean, obviously a little prettier than I'm doing right here, and then always from the inverted output, because that's the default output of the memory cell. You can then run that to your turret that's too far away. And there you go. We've just extended our line. And so that's a really, really cool thing you can do with the memory cell. So that's one of my favorite tricks that I like to do whenever I'm trying to run long lines. So yeah, memory cell is a wire extender, tip 3. Tip 4, branch switch and the splitter. So everyone knows that the splitter has 3 outputs, right? And so if you happen to have 3 turrets, that's just great because how convenient. But what if you want just a 4th turret and you don't want to run a bunch of extra switches or whatever, you want 4 turrets on one line? What are you gonna do? So in this current setup, you would of course run power to your switch here. You would run the power of the switch into your splitter, and you have what, 10, 20, 30, 31, 32 volt requirement there. Set this to 32 volts, and there you go. We've got 3 turrets, each of them receiving the required 10 volts, just like we need. But what if you want 1 extra turret? Your base is not that big. You want 4 turrets off of a single switch. You know, what are you gonna do? You could, if you wanted to, you could put 2 more splitters. You know, it gets really complicated. I mean, it's not really that complicated, honestly, but it's just kind of unnecessary. And so one simple thing you can do is just add a branch. And it's just gonna take up 1 extra volt, that's nothing. You're gonna run the branch out to your input on your splitter here, and then the power out is actually gonna run to your other turret that you wanna add, like so. And then the output of this is going to run to the, I guess we'll just go over to here. Output of this is gonna run into there like that. And so now all you have to do is, you know, the only actual setting is you have to set this to manage this and the three turrets. So you have 3 turrets on the splitter, so 10, 20, 30, 31, including the splitter. I'm gonna set that to 31. And then now if you just add up your extra turret, it's gonna auto put out exactly what you need in the power out because you've put out everything you need for this and further. And so you have 10, 20, 30, 40, 41, 42, 43. So if you set this to 43, you now have everything you need, flop it on, and there you go. You got 4 turrets on 1 switch. This one's automatically pumping out the 10 that you need. You got 10, 10, and 10, and you're good to go. So that's tip number 4, branch switch in the splitter. If you want 4 outputs on 1 switch, you can just add a branch, good old branch. All right, so the final and biggest tip here is what I'm calling when to daisy chain. So daisy chaining, just so we can all make sure we're on the same page here, is where you take items and you power an item after it with the previous item. So we've got power into this light, power up, pass through is going to this light's powering this light, and so forth. And so of course, in daisy chaining, if for instance, say you've got your lights set up, which is a perfectly fine way to run your lights, it makes zero sense not to daisy chain your lights because they're so cheap and easy to fix. But if someone breaks into your base and they say damage the first light in the chain, all the other lights cease to function. And so that is the risk of the daisy chain. And so in this example here, what I've done is I've set up two sets of doors. The top set of doors with the green line are door controllers that are daisy chained one after another. So this last one here is fed by this one. So this door controller here is the first in the chain, and this door controller and everything after it is powered by this one. So and so you can imagine that if you lost this one, you lose all of those. So in this scenario, I've hooked this to my base lockdown circuit that I made. You can use the link above if you would like to see how this works. So I've got this base lockdown circuit set up here, and it, basically it works like this. Let's say you're in your base and you've got some of these doors are open or whatever, and you arm it, or it auto arms, however you've set this up, and you run it, it's going to close the open doors and cycle from closed to open to close, and you end up with all closed doors. So the point here is that, yeah, that works great. But let's say somebody broke into your base and they destroyed that door, and they destroyed that door controller in the process, and you still had, maybe you're out or you got killed, you still have some of these doors that are open, and your base lockdown circuit detects the player and runs it. It's not going to do anything because the daisy chain is such that everything beneath the first one that they happen to break has negated everything after it. So this is a reason why in this situation you don't ever want to daisy chain doors like this. And so if we hook up this system real quick, let's hook it up to the bottom set of doors. And so I'm just going to run this to the input of these bottom doors. And these bottom doors are set up where each of these door controllers has its own private line. And that line runs all the way back, all the way down to one of these outputs here. Each of these outputs, when they're powered, will send out 1 volt, one to each door controller. And so if I just, let's see, this is going to require 8. Again, if you want to know why I'm doing this, watch the other video on my base lockdown. So now I've set this base lockdown up to the new door setup. So now we have everything we need. So now let's say we've got some doors open here, just like we had before. And let's say, same scenario, this thing's armed. Somebody blows in through this door and they destroy this door and they destroy that door controller. And then the system detects them. It's still gonna run, yeah, this door is open, but it's gonna close all those open doors and cycle those closed doors from open to close. Despite damage to the base. And this is the reason why when you're thinking about hooking up systems, you need to consider whether it's appropriate or not to daisy chain. So things like emergency door systems like this, no, you don't want to daisy chain. Your lights, absolutely, who cares? If you're, I also have a video about, ways to wire like a pro. If you're curious about how you should break these systems up, watch that video. I have a whole section on using branch switches to separate out your circuits in a way that's efficient and safe. So, hey guys, that is all I've got. I hope some of these were useful to you. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. You can get in my Discord. See you later.